Let's take a look at page 14 of our notebook for a few regression examples. Now, we've used some data sets before, and we remember that regression is simply a fancy way of saying we're going to take data and turn it into an equation. Now, we need to know what kind of equation we're going to be using, so that was where we look at some things like what kind of line it tells us we're looking for. This one is looking for a line. It's looking for a linear model. And it wants to know what that model might look like. That's the idea of a trend line. Now, we're used to seeing our data before previously, when we enter these in, as a table of values like this with an X and a Y. It's okay that we have data in a different format. It simply means we're going to take our X and our Y coordinates and put all of the X's into list 1, all the Y's into list 2. So all of my X's I'm going to put into list 1 of my calculator. All of the Y's I'm going to put into list 2. That means I need my calculator. Follow my key settings over here if I move too fast. But I'm going to go to Stat, Enter because I want to edit my list. I need to clear out my 2 lists that are in there existing already. So I click up until it's highlighted, use the Clear button, and then when I push back down, that list is cleared out. Now I need all of my X values. So I'll use 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, and then all of my Y values in the same order. 5, 7, 9, 10, and 11. With this data set, I double check to make sure because one wrong keystroke can really send us in a bad direction. Everything looks fantastic, matches purely here. So it tells me, first of all, I need to graph each set of data. Looks like I need a scatter plot here. So I'm going to use my Y equals. And notice I have an equation in here from before. I don't think I want that anymore, so I'm going to clear that out. And I want to make sure that my stat plot is set to go. Now here you can tell that it's turned on because it is highlighted. But I'm not sure if that thing is set correctly. So I'm going to use my stat plot settings here. So I'll use second Y equals to go to my stat plot menu. Now when I hit enter, I'm editing what the settings are for plot 1. I make sure it's turned on. Scatter plot, list 1, list 2, looks all set to go. And I want to use zoom 9 because remember that's what's going to match our statistics, where we put our data. So I'm going to scroll down, or you can just touch number 9, your choice. I use zoom stat for statistics, hit enter, and that is what my scatter plot looks like. It does look very much like I could draw a straight line and catch a lot of that data. So I need to make sure I'm graphing it here. So here's 1.35, 47, 59, 8, 10, and 9, 11 is off the charts a little bit. Now, I've made that decision. It looks like a linear model is reasonable. I can draw something that looks pretty much like a straight line, and that straight line is going to roughly be about like that. And it seems like I'm going to get most of my data with a line roughly like that. That trend line is just an idea of what a straight line might look like, but now I need an actual equation. So to get this equation, I need to run, let's see, I need to run a regression. And this time I know I need a linear regression because it tells me I'm looking for a linear model. So I'm going to use a lin reg on my calculator, linear regression. We find that in the stat arrow over to calculate, and here it is, number 4 for us. Now remember, our calculators have 2 different interfaces of how we go about this. If you have this older setting, we need to tell it to use list 1, comma, list 2, comma. That's because that's where I put my 2 sets of data. In the other interface, it should already say list 1, list 2. Just double check and go down to where you're going to do your store regression equation. We're at the same place now on both calculators. Make sure you have a comma here for the old interface. And now we all touch vars. We want a y equals so it can go to our graph. We want a function. That's what we're going to use in pretty much all of Algebra 2 here. And I want to store it in my y1. And so there it is. It should be there. Now that I'm ready to actually run this regression and see what I have, I can just hit enter and it gives me all of that information. Now yours probably has an r squared on it. It should, and that's a-okay. But since I'm just looking for the equation, I'm going to go ahead and write this. I'm going to use this y equals ax plus b, except I'm going to plug in what a and b are. So y equals, let's see, a is, let's go to 3 decimal places, 0.873. 873x, sorry, I'm writing with my opposite hand, plus 3.336. Now I'm going to round that because my next number is an 8, so that's going to tell me to round that up. So 3.336 is what I'm looking at, plus 3.336. So there we have it, the idea of how we can graph our data, draw a trend line that seems to match, input our data to find an exact model that would match our data. This is the very best fit it could possibly have. I'll leave it to you to graph this. Remember to decide whether a linear model is reasonable first before you go to writing your equation. If you'd like to watch the next video, it's about candles and how we can use 2 sets of data points to start this. And we'll also look at some of our later examples in some future videos. Keep on watching.